Okay, so before we start, I just want to address something. I'm about to discuss the most important part of the body for poker tells. Personally, I hate the word poker tells because it's a term that is filled with so many misconceptions. Players are often too concerned with establishing patterns before using reads. Sometimes behavior creates such a powerful narrative that you don't actually have to establish that a behavior is a pattern before using it, and poker tells are way more complex than if someone does X, that means Y. That being said, when it comes to identifying reliable patterns or tells in players, the most important part of the body is without a doubt the hands, and I'm going to give you 7 core reasons that will explain why. The first is volume. The number of tells that are a result of hand movement significantly outweighs any other part of the body. For example, the speed and style of the way a player bets, a player's card apex, how a player holds their cards or puts a chip on their cards, the time it takes for someone to check their cards, the smoothness of hand movements during a player's actions or decision time, the 10 to 20 different ways a player can hesitate at the table, the level of tension, and the way a player will use specific gestures or hand movements to reduce or conceal certain emotions all provide valuable insight into a player's mental state and thought process. In the Beyond Tells studies, a majority of the poker tells we found were a result of paying attention to the hands. I mean, there are players where just focusing on hands alone and nothing else, it can just provide you with amazing insight into hand strength. Second, hand movements are required. At a table, you don't have to talk, you don't have to move your face, you don't have to get up or change your position. If we were looking for changes and deviations in movement, one of the best places to find that is in the area of the body that is required to essentially move the most. You have to check your cards, you have to raise, fold, etc. Your hands are the most required element at the poker table. Third, hands can't be concealed. You can put glasses on your eyes, cover your face, wear a scarf to cover your neck, but when it comes to hands, you can't hide the movement. Your hands have to be used in order to actually play the game. Maybe after this video, someone will wear giant Mickey Mouse gloves or something like that, but so far I haven't seen any solutions to cover up the hands. Fourth is timing. Other pieces of information like genuine displays of emotion in the face can happen so quickly and be over in less than a second. So you need to be paying attention to the right person at the right time and focusing on the right part of their face. The timing of when a player uses their hands is much more predictable and ultimately easier to isolate. A player can slightly gesture or move forward, and then you can start to pay attention to that individual. Fifth is that people are so terrible at standardizing behavior that their attempts sometimes make them easier to read. For example, a player pulls back their cards, checks them, and holds them in a specific way, not realizing that there is a slight difference in distance when hands are strong versus marginal. The standardization of behavior is something a lot of players get really wrong. It's not easy, and often the process they use makes it easier for people to spot deviations in behavior. For example, a player may always put a chip on their cards, but won't realize that, when they place the chip faster, they have a stronger hand. Sixth is recognition and interpretation. The hands will be much easier to interpret than other parts of the body. For example, without any in-depth training, a player would have an easier time spotting changes in the way a player bets or checks their cards, as opposed to decoding the meaning of a specific movement in the upper half of the face. Hands are simply less complicated than other regions of the body. Also, this has been said before in a 2013 study which was led by Michael Slepian. He touched upon this issue when he had participants decode poker hand quality from minimal visual information, and also found that the hands were the most effective area to pay attention to. Actually, I've met Michael, who is now our professor at Columbia, and let him know he was 100% correct. 7 is intention and cognitive process. Because the hands are necessary in order to execute the majority of decisions you will need to make at the table, we often see information embedded inside this movement. This is ultimately why the hands are so damn valuable. It's because this information is often connected to some sort of thought process. The information will still require interpretation based on context, but whether you have an experienced player who is slightly hesitates because they believe they might get more value by betting a smaller amount, or a very inexperienced player who hesitates because he finally gets a big pair and doesn't want to mess up, the behavioral information in the hands during an action or a decision can almost narrate a player's thought. So when behaviors are connected to a thought process, it makes interpretation just more accurate at the table. So in summary, the hands are so important, not only because of the fact that you can find so many patterns embedded in the movement, but also because it is part of the body that is difficult to standardize or conceal, and fundamentally linked to the most important actions at the table. If you want to sort of make this all practical and show you how to read the hands at the table, check out the Behavioral Edge workshop. Once again, thanks for watching and reach out if you have any questions.